Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. It's now 2 o'clock, and I think we'll get started. People will probably start joining us shortly, but we're going to get started now to try to keep on track. I'm Diane Horton from Procurement Services, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. The panelist with me today is Mark Teekamp from Sustainable Procurement. Mark will be presenting his webinar titled Helping Social Enterprises Sell Their Goods and Services to the Government of Nova Scotia. Today's webinar is number 2 in a 3-part series. Together, these 3 webinars are meant to help strengthen social enterprises by providing you with the knowledge to move forward with the procurement processes. Before we start, let's just take a quick moment to ensure that everyone's ready. First off, you should have a control panel on your screen to the right-hand side, which contains a small icon image of a hand. Just to ensure everyone can hear our audio clearly, could you take a second just to click on this button? It'll just let me know that you can hear us okay. Okay, so we can see that there's a few hands up, so we know people can hear us. If you're having any issues or anything like that with hearing us, just go right down to the chat or questions section and you can just type in to let us know. For today's session, you're also able to submit any questions at any time, also using this control panel. If this is your first time participating in a webinar, the process is simple for asking questions. Just simply type a question into the text window under the questions section and press enter. These questions then will appear on everyone's screen. You can submit your text questions at any time, but due to time management, we will be waiting until the end to answer all questions. You should also know that a recording of the webinar for today will be posted on our website where you will be able to reference it at any time. This webinar will be approximately 15 minutes in length, plus a short Q&A at the end. So let's get started. Now I'm going to pass things over to Mark.
Hi everyone, my name is Mark Teekamp and I'm the Sustainable Procurement Project Coordinator for the Nova Scotia Department of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism. I'm pleased to give this presentation today on helping social enterprises sell their goods and services to the public sector. As you can see, the outline for today's presentation is here. We will start with a conversation about the difference between low and high value purchases and why this is important. We will provide a description of current trade agreements, acts, policies that direct Nova Scotia public sector spending. We will end with an explanation of other helpful resources. With regard to public sector procurement, the rules that we must follow depend on the dollar value. The individual departments and agencies have much more flexibility with low-value purchases, which are under $10,000. Anything more than that has to go through a well-defined process, which we'll describe shortly. Social enterprises may be interested in low-value purchases because they are certainly easier to obtain, more frequent, etc. As described in an earlier presentation, part 1 of this series, most of the spending with social enterprises is less than $1,000 per transaction. The public sector can also express a Nova Scotia preference for these low-value purchases to support local suppliers. These decisions are left up to the discretionary spending of each department. Departments have 3 choices with low-value spending. Number 1, they can go directly to a business that has a standing offer. Number 2, they could get 3 or more quotes from known suppliers to get a competitive price. Number 3, they could go directly to a supplier that they know will offer good value. High-value purchases refer to those transactions that are greater than $10,000 in value. Some examples might include purchases of vehicles, construction of buildings, roads, infrastructure. These purchases must go through a formal tendering process, which is intended to be fully transparent, public, and open. All high-value tenders must be publicly advertised. When these tenders are posted, they are open to all businesses, and many may submit competing bids on the same tender. Although the rules and process are strictly adhered to, the process is designed to be fair and efficient. Next, we'll describe the Tender Opportunities Notification Service. This is a helpful tool when looking for possible high-value purchase opportunities. You can find the Tender Opportunities Notification Service, or TONS for short, on the web. By registering for TONS, you will be informed by email of public sector procurement opportunities matching the goods and/or services that you have selected to describe your business, service categories, I should say. Each notification will provide general information about the tender as well as a link to the Nova Scotia Procurement web portal. Why sign up for tons? The Nova Scotia government has extended public sector, the Nova Scotia government and the extended public sector spend over $1 billion each year on goods, services, and construction. All public sector entities in Nova Scotia are required to post over-threshold purchases on the Nova Scotia Procurement web portal. You will save time and money by having notices sent directly to your email inbox. This table summarizes the thresholds in place for low and high value purchases. This is how we bought. To sum up, you can see that low value purchases have the $10,000 threshold and are usually handled by the individual departments. They are not required to be publicly tendered, but they might be. They are subject to complementary process, for example, the alternative procurement practices, the Nova Scotia preference, permanent exemptions, and standing offers, rules for that, and they often require, quotes from different suppliers. High-value purchases are those greater than $10,000. They are subject to the complementary procurement processes and are also publicly tendered. With regard to the complementary procurement process, the thresholds also differ between goods, services, and the Nova Scotia preference. So the question, can we purchase from social enterprises? The procurement rules say yes. The rules clearly say yes. In the last few years, there's been significant legislative support for social enterprises. Government purchasing is governed by trade agreements. We'll get into that very quickly. The Public Procurement Act that came about in 2011 and the Sustainable Procurement Policy from 2009. There are a number of trade agreements in place to promote fair and open trade. Some examples include the Atlantic Procurement Agreement, the APA, the Agreement on Internal Trade, the AIT, and the Canada-U.S. Procurement Agreement, CUSPA. It is the intention of these agreements to promote a stable domestic market and long-term economic growth. There aren't any specific provisions for social enterprises per se, but the language has exemptions for nonprofits or philanthropic institutions or purchases from persons with disabilities. These trade agreements apply to high-value purchases and could be applicable if you are a social enterprise with a for-profit business model. Next, we have the Public Procurement Act. This act recently came into place in 2011. The Act applies to all departments, the managed sector, and Crown agencies. The purpose of the legislation is to create a governance structure that will enable all the public sector to share knowledge, practices, and processes on procurement. With regard to this presentation, it should be noted that sustainable procurement is referenced throughout the Act. Specifically, what does the Act say? For example, the Chief Procurement Officer will promote the use of sustainable procurement criteria in all public sector entity procurement decisions. In addition, there's an important clause right at the beginning that specifically references social enterprises. Section 2C states that we must promote sustainable procurement and procurement decisions, including identifying and exploring opportunities to work with and support social enterprises and businesses that are owned by and who employ underrepresented populations. So while there is no specific tools provided to work with social enterprises, this does promote high-level support for working with such organizations. Next, we have the Sustainable Procurement Policy. The Sustainable Procurement Policy came into place in 2009 and was mentioned in Webinar 1. All government departments are now required to consider sustainable criteria in all procurement decisions. The Act creates an important provision whereas departments can do a direct purchase of goods manufactured in Nova Scotia up to $10,000. Whenever purchasing, getting a number of quotes is always advised but not necessarily required for these departments to purchase from social enterprises in Nova Scotia. This does not apply to services. This policy also has provisions for the alternative procurement or ALT-P transactions for circumstances such as processes that foster the development of minority businesses, shelter workshop programs, or goods and services from persons with disabilities, philanthropic institutions, or through employment equity programs. The Act is a key tool for sustainable procurement. It offers policy support and specific tools for purchasing from social enterprises. To sum up, there's a great deal of support for purchasing from social enterprises. From the last couple slides, trade agreements have a number of exemptions for purchasing. Public Procurement Act provides a high-level support and guidance, and the Sustainable Procurement Policy provides specific policy support and tools. Next up, we have a number of other ideas that can help social enterprises sell their goods and services to the public sector. We can't emphasize enough that you should do your research to better learn the business climate. For example, try to learn which departments are purchasing your goods and services. Some may be more interested or in need of what you're selling than others. You should get familiar with the purchasing practices of departments relevant to what you're selling. See if you can learn how and when do they buy. You should get familiar with the procurement language, learn about standing offers, tenders, alt-Ps, RFPs, low-value purchasing rules. You should identify who your business competition is, see if they are also doing business with government departments, call those departments to see if you could also quote on goods and services. Search previous tenders in your category. This can be done on the procurement website. Emphasize your unique features. Social enterprises have a lot to offer the Nova Scotia economy. And build relationships. Always talk to people, network, attend the reverse trade show, which we will be talking about in the next webinar, how to get the most out of the reverse trade show. Next, we have the link to our website. It's www.ns.ca/tenders. Here you'll find tender postings, news, helpful documents, sustainable procurement materials, case studies, and event notices. Here it is. This is an idea of what's up there. You can see the links, the latest news, tenders, and even write-ups of events that might be of interest. There's a description on the reverse trade show. Procurement services is increasingly using social media, such as Twitter. Twitter has become almost a regular way of doing business for us. While the website maintains its place as a great source for all the new tenders, events, etc., Procurement Services is using Twitter more and more to get the word out for new tenders. You can follow us on Twitter at ns_procure. Here's the Twitter page. So this is my last slide of the presentation. I'll pass it back to Diane to facilitate questions and the conclusion.
Great, thank you, Mark. We now have some time left over to take a few questions regarding this webinar. Again, to submit a question, just simply type in the text window under the questions section and press enter. Right now, we'll just take a few moments so you can gather maybe a question or two that you might have, and we'll be right back. Okay, so one of the questions we had earlier was regarding tons. The question was around, is there a fee or what's the cost to register for tons, which is the Tender Opportunity Notification Service Mark has talked about. The answer for that, no, there is not any fee. It takes less than 5 minutes to register. You simply go to the website. The only thing you do need is an email address. You simply just type in your email address, enter in your name and your company name, and it takes you to a profile screen. On this profile screen, you'll be able to select categories which best describe your business opportunities that you're looking for. So if you're not in construction, you wouldn't select the construction categories. That way you're not getting too many emails coming to your account regarding things that are of no interest. So that was the question. Again, very easy process, less than 5 minutes. Another question we had earlier was regarding tender postings. Now that the Public Procurement Act is now in place, as of April of last year, it's now mandatory that all the MASH sector entities do their postings on one location, which is our home tender website. And they post both their tender notices as well as their awards. So you can even go there to that page to not only see what kind of opportunities might exist, but if you're doing some research, as Mark suggested, to see who your competition might be or see what opportunities existed, you could go back and do back history, and you're going to see internal government history for the last 6 years. But again, where the Public Procurement Act just came in place for the MASH sector, who would be municipalities, academic institutions, school boards, and health authorities, they only had to post since April of last year, so you can only go back for 1 year for them. But still, it's a great learning resource if you're looking for that kind of information. Okay, so I don't see any more questions coming in right now. So I guess that will start to wrap up our session for today. If you do have any questions that either you didn't want to ask right now or you think of later, please feel free to email us. We'd like to thank everyone for participating today. We invite you to attend our next webinar titled Getting the Most of the Reverse Trade Show. This session will be presented on Thursday, March 14th at 2 o'clock. That's this Thursday. Everyone who attended today's session will receive an email invitation for our next webinar session. If you do not, please just call or send us an email to the address noted on the slide. As well, if you have any questions later on regarding this webinar or any other webinars, just drop them to the same email address noted on the slide. That concludes our session for today. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to be present at our webinar. Thank you, and to exit this session, just click on the X at the right-hand top of your screen. Thank you very much.